Hi there, Frank here for premium members for the trading day of April the 1st, 2026, a Wednesday. Let's see what the new month can bring us. So let's look at the markets, and some changes seem to be happening here. So I'm going to walk you through here. So first of all, this is what we call an instant reversal, which means that in other words, a price rejection. Lower prices have been rejected. There's a forceful move to the upside. Price looks like it didn't even want to be there. And this is often a precursor of something happening to the other side. Now, this is not a setup on the daily chart, of course, in the strict sense of the word. What we can do, if you don't want to wait till price hits the Keltner on the daily, we can perhaps find opportunities along this journey. All right? This is a difficult situation because price usually doesn't go up in a straight line. But what we can do on the 4-hour chart, we can look for pullbacks, something like this. And if there's healthy pullbacks here on the 4-hour or perhaps even smaller charts, then you can target the whatever time frame you're on, target the upper Keltner. And the other markets, the other 4 indexes, the other 3 are also showing very similar situations. This is also a price rejection here, you see. And one more comment I can add to all this, that in a situation like this, often what helps is if you zoom out. And if you zoom out, what you see is that this is a very large complex pullback here on the weekly time frame, deeply penetrating our linear regression calculation, in other words, the Remek cloud, the blue cloud. And often what happens here, price bounces back like a trampoline and hits, or at least moves towards, the previous pivot. This is what I'm expecting, so I'm starting to become a bit more bullish on the indexes. Let's see if price action tomorrow and in the next couple of days confirms my theory. And let's move on to some other markets and currencies also showing similar signs of a potential reversal. Again, looking at higher time frames, just to have an idea about where price has been lately or in the past year or two or even several years, always helps. So here we are around 116 or so, and 120 is what we could target with this move. Okay, so this is what I can see here. The Swiss franc, perhaps the Canadian dollar also looks similar. I'm not going to look at all of them, but the idea is the same on all these currencies. Now, the next one is commodities. Let's see what the CL is up to. The daily continues to be a mess, but the 4-hour at least resembles a pullback here. And although the weekly chart is completely destroyed from a technical perspective, if you want to be engaged with this market, then the 4-hour time frame looks good enough to get involved. And let's move on to GC and SI, which also show signs of a reversal. We started this a couple of days ago. If you read my notes, then this bottom tail was the first sign that something is changing. You see, something is changing. Again, deep penetration into the otherwise bullish potential. You see bullish momentum here on the weekly time frame. So the weekly might work or function as a trampoline for us here. Let's see if we can approach the upper Keltner on the daily. And what you can do with this market, again, I think the best idea is to look at the 4-hour chart and look for pullbacks. If you like this type of content, I encourage you to check out our premium membership, especially the annual premium membership, which includes all our services as well as all our software. If you just want to purchase our software, you can do so in the shop as well. In either case, we hope to have you on board soon as we build our community of traders dedicated to trading excellence. Thank you, and I hope to see you soon. Now, gold and silver are not easy. Remember what happened in January, this collapse of the expected collapse, by the way, of a parabolic market. So we need to get back to normal or some structures that we can actually start to trade. The SI is next. Here we go, bottom tail, and action on the 4-hour points towards a potential move back to at least 100, perhaps, hard to say. Okay, let's move on to some other markets. Let's look at Bitcoin for a second. A few days ago, we said this might be building a base, remember? Actually, several weeks ago, because this is the weekly chart. This bottom tail was the first time I said this could be the end of it. And, well, there's no further breakdown, you see? So this is what we call building a base. Building a base can take time, but actually it's healthy because from this point on, we can start to look for our usual patterns. Now, one more, I'd like to show you a couple of things here on agriculturals. Let's start with corn, which is a mess on the daily, yes, but I still expect that this will move to the upside based on the weekly structure here, but this spike is not really something we usually get involved with, but if there's nothing else, you might try some small size. Now, soybeans looks a little better. Let's look at that. See, now this is a pretty strange situation, a complete collapse on the daily chart, but then stabilization, building a base inside a strong momentum on the daily. We have the algorithmic signal. How you can do this? Well, this is not a typical setup for us, but if you want, you can treat this as a breakout trade. And if this breaks, then you can go and target somewhere around 1240 or so. Last but not least, we have some action here on wheat, which is perhaps the best looking, but warning signals also are present here in the form of the stop tail. Normally and usually, we ignore any long setups here after a exhaustion candle like this, but there's nothing better. So if you want, based on the weekly, probably that's the best time frame to take care of this or handle this situation here. Look at this reversal structure. Perhaps we can get even a measured move out of this. So in situations like this, by the way, when charts are messy, but we start to see at least something that we recognize, what we can do is to scale back and do these trades with smaller size, smaller risk. That could be ETFs, or if you're on futures, then reduce your size and handle the increased uncertainty that way. In any case, we're starting to pay attention. I hope you are too. This is the time to get things started here for 2026, I guess. Let's see what the morning brings. We'll be back, and until then, mindful trading.